So today we're going to discuss what do you need to install solar on an RV. What steps you need to take. Do you just go out and buy panels? That's a no. Battery, same thing. What do we need to do first? What I always suggest to everyone is first buy one of these battery monitors. It's an amp meter that reads the voltage that's going to your battery and getting taken away from your battery. There's expensive ones out there that are over $100 even, but this one seems to do the job really good. You hook it on your negative terminal, and it will read how many volts are going into your, or how many amps are going into your battery and being taken away from your battery. By default, when you first set it up, you tell it how large of an amp hour battery you have, and then it just does its thing. Let's say, for example, you're running this on a lead acid battery. Your lead acid battery is 100 amp hour, but only 50 amp hours are usable because you should never run it past 50%. So you would tell this device when it's at 100% charge that your battery is 50 amp hours of usage, and that's how you would initially set this thing up. Once you set that up, take your RV to a campground, lead acid and all. Don't put any solar panels. Don't do anything to it. Go to a campground that has electric, and don't hook your RV up to the electric. We want to see, day and night what amount of juice your RV is going to suck out when you're running whatever devices you're running. Like for me, I run a television that's 20-inch LED. I run a Blu-ray for the kids at night, and of course, a ceiling fan and things like that are 12 volt. So powering my, charging my devices and things like that. So just kind of go out there, do a normal thing with everybody, and see how many amp hours this device is saying your battery is being sucked down from. If you're like me and you're getting sucked down to 50 amp hours of juice every day, then I would suggest buying a 140 amp hour lithium ion battery. The reason why you want to go more than what you're actually using is when you get out there and you go 3, 4, 5 days camping, even 3 days, your solar panels on the roof are not going to charge up your battery that well if you're on a campground that has trees. So the trees are going to be blocking your solar panels, and it's just not going to charge them up really well. So you want a battery that'll give you a little safety net. That way you can go out there, even 50 amp hours per day times 5 days is 250 amp hours of use. I have a 140 amp hour battery. That extra 100 amp hours, I can get that from the 5 days from the solar, from the tree line. It's fine. Now, I'm only running a 200 watt solar panels on the roof. I would suggest, in my situation, I'm running a PWM charge controller, and in my situation, I think I'm going to upgrade to an MPPT charge controller. The reason why MPPT charge controllers do a much, much better job when you're under the tree canopy, so at campgrounds that have trees everywhere. MPPT charge controllers just do a really, really great job of finding that voltage and charging your batteries even under the trees. So that's why I'm going to get an MPPT. Another option also is to bump up your solar panels, get 400 watts of solar panels. I don't think I'm going to do that because I know my problem is the trees, and it seems like 200 watts is fine for me if I had a way for the panels to get it to the battery. So in my case, an MPPT charge controller will fix my situation. So we're going to talk about the way you wire up your solar panels. There are two different ways. You can either wire them up in a series or parallel. So parallel means that you're running at a higher amp but a lower voltage. So you're running out, let's say you hook up 4 100 watt solar panels in parallel. That means you're going to get an output of 12 volts, but it's going to run you at higher amps coming out. The bad things about it are you need a bigger cable because you're running higher amps at a 12 volt rating, a lower voltage. So you need larger copper wires for it. Basically, it means on your solar panels, all the reds are going together, all the blacks are going together, and they all come together on your charge controller right here. It's 12 volt input into your charge controller, but it's a higher amps. There's limitations to it, but the main benefit to it is if you are camping with your RV under a tree area, so you're camping in campgrounds that have a lot of trees, you probably should run your solar panels in a parallel formation. You can't run as many because of the wattage limits, but you'll get more charge out of it. And the reason why is a parallel solar system, if one of the panels is shaded and shuts down, the other ones will still get the full amount of voltage that are coming through it. So let's say one panel is getting 3 watts of power of capability. Another panel is getting 70 watts of power of charging, and another one's getting, 60 watts of power charging. You're going to get the full amount of power off of each of those panels. Where if you're running in series and one of your panels was pulling 5 watts of power, all of your panels are going to pull 5 watts of power. It's going to really cut down the amount of power those panels are going to be making. So series is bad because in a tree canopy area, you're going to be really limiting the amount of power you're going to be creating or converting into your battery. So in my opinion, on an RV, on a tree canopy area, parallel is the way to set these up. Now, series is good because it's very efficient. You can get a higher voltage rating, which means you can run 24 volts into your 24 volt system. Just more efficient for that. You can run more panels because of this. So it just depends on what you're needing to do. I also wanted to show you what a wiring in series looks like. So you got your negatives coming in, and it comes in and runs from negative to power, negative to power, negative to power. So you can see how these are running in a series. Okay, so let's talk about wiring the system up. So you got your solar panels that'll be on your roof. In a parallel system, you're going to run all your reds together, all your blacks together, and then it's going to run to your MPPT charge controller or your PWM. These are either one, they're wired up the same. Then you have your output to your battery. So this takes the solar, converts it, and charges your battery. At this point, you'll run your positive and negatives to your inverter inside your RV. That way you can convert your battery to 110 volts. Now, I do want to say, if you buy one 140 amp hour battery that has 12 volts, that 140 amp hour, for example, this one right here, this one has 100 amp of producible power at once. This means at 12 volts, this battery will produce 1200 watts of power. This means you should only get a 1200 watt power inverter because you won't be able to produce anything more. This 1200 watts is your limit. Now, if you needed to produce more, for example, you're running an air conditioner on your RV and you needed to produce 2400 watts of power, you're going to have to do a completely different setup, and that's a completely different episode than this one. So we'll talk about that on another episode, running an air conditioner off these batteries. But in this case, if you're running 1200 watts or below, then this setup will handle everything. So this is the battery that I recommend for this situation if you're only using 50 amp hours of juice every day. And believe it or not, 50 amp hours of power, you can run a lot of stuff. You can run your fans, you can run television. I'm running I want to say it's like a 20-inch TV with a Blu-ray player at nighttime so the kids can watch something. It's running pretty much everything in the RV except for the microwave and the air conditioner. But it is running a ceiling fan, which is sucking out all the hot air. So it's pretty comfortable overall. So 140 amp hours should be just fine. Of course, you need a battery box because the 140 amp hour battery is a little wider, about 30% wider than a standard battery. What's the nice thing about getting this box is you can put chains on it to secure it down, of course, and lock it. But because this is a double battery box, you can put your 140 amp hour battery in here. You can put your charge controller in here and all the wiring that you need. So I put everything in here. I replaced the straps with chains, and everything is self-contained in one box. So it's really nice to put it all here. You don't have to drill things in your RV. The only thing I did run into my RV is this device. I did run this into the RV. That way I can see how much power is left, how much power I'm charging on the batteries. So this gives me a good reference to all that. So here's the solar panels I would suggest doing. The only thing is this solar panel setup comes with a PWM charge controller. That's not a bad thing to have it. Just have it as a spare. So you can buy an MPPT charge controller for this setup, and then have your PWM just throw it in a drawer in your RV. That way, if anything happens and your MPPT charge controller quits working, you have your PWM as a backup right there. So it is kind of nice. And those PWM charge controllers are so cheap. They're like $30. So throw it in a drawer and you'll have a nice backup. The Dicor self-leveling lap sealant. When you screw these solar panels on your roof, you'll want to put lap sealant. So what I do is I find out where the panels are going to go, and then I put some lap sealant on that spot. Then I set the panel down where I'm going to put it on top of that lap sealant. That way there's a little bit of a lap sealant between the panel and the roof. And then I screw the panel down to the roof, and then I lap sealant over where I put the screws at. That way there's a lap sealant between and there's lap sealant over it. You need, whenever you're running power from your battery to your inverter that's inside your RV, you need 15 feet running 1200 watts, 4 gauge wire is perfect. But make sure that when you buy this copper, it says pure copper. There are a lot of copper wires out there that are they're aluminum inside and they're copper coated. Those, do not buy those. Those are going to cause you so many problems. Expansion, contraction. These two different metals do not expand and contract at the same rates, and you're going to loosen up your connections. The flow of electric going through it is different. Always get pure copper wire. And like I said, a 1200 watt, 15 feet, 4 gauge wire is plenty for 1200 watts of your power inverter. So pure copper wire. Make sure it says that. There's so many out there. There's a million of them out there that are, they're like, instead of $36 for this wire, you'll pay, $27 or something. You'll be like, oh, that's a good deal. It's a copper coated aluminum wire. Do not get that. You need a battery isolator. This way, whenever wintertime comes along, I can just kick everything off, shut everything from the solar system to the inside. I can kill everything, and the batteries are completely disconnected. I like doing this right at the beginning of the wintertime because I don't want my batteries to be cycling over and over and over during the winter when they shouldn't need to be cycling. I will disconnect them like about December, and around maybe March, I'll turn everything back on. That way, during those months, these batteries are not cycling up and down, up and down. I can just let them, they're already charged up by December, disconnect them, they'll drain down just a hair during those months, and then March, turn everything back on. It'll cycle everything back up, recharge them, you're good to go. It's just a good way to make your batteries last longer. These are the inline circuit breakers. I put these between the solar panels, wires coming into the charge controller. This way I can click these fuses off during the winter time and completely just disengage my solar from the system. If I go click click, and my solar is disconnected from the charge controller. Also, it's a safety thing. It's nice to have a breaker from your solar panels going in, because if something happened, you don't want, you know, it to have too much juice or whatever, or a short. So this is a good idea to have it between your solar panel and your charge controller. And here's the 1200 watt pure sine power inverter. The reason why you need a pure sine inverter is, and you can see I actually purchased this for mine. You need a pure sine because any of your electronic devices, if you're not running a pure sine, it's going to kill them. It's going to kill your iPhones. It's going to kill every device you have. So you have to have a pure sine wave inverter. And I like this one because it's good, it's reliable. What I do is I run a power cord from here. It goes up to the top, and let me show you the cord I actually ended up buying. So real quickly, I just wanted to show you this real quick. This is where I put the remote switch. I clicked that, and it would turn the inverter on at the bottom. This is the one that's going from the battery, and I actually just ran this one from the switch I had above. That way I can easily access my battery, which is coming from the inverter, and the shore, which is coming from my shore power. Just a nice way to be able to power everything from one spot. And I'll show you where the inverter is below. So the inverter is in this cabinet below, and to attach it to the back wall, to keep it out of the way, I have it of course high on the back wall, and I used these screw-in wall anchors. They're kind of similar to the plastic ones. These are at Home Depot. They hold 50 pounds of pressure a piece. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom of my inverter, and it's screwing, basically it's holding that inverter to the wall, and it will never come off. 200 pounds of structure holding that power inverter to the wall, so it won't come off no matter how much bouncing around you're going to do. Nice way to secure it. Just another note, this is another nice to have. So I have an outlet right here, which I added that little thing going over the outlet. That way my shore power, I can have USB power and all these capabilities and outlets there. But I also drilled a hole and put this above it. That way my battery power, I can actually add a extra cigarette powered USB here. I have a little meter that tells me how much voltage, which really doesn't matter, but it's there. Tell me how much voltage I'm making. I have 2 high output USBs here for charging my kids' tablets and stuff. So I got the capability to put 4 USBs on the battery right here, USB charging ports, and then just click it off so I don't waste the battery. So just another nice add-on.